Good morning, everyone. Again, this is Anas Al-Haji from North Texas. We'll talk about OPEC decision in a few minutes. I would like to welcome my co-host, Patrick Dehan from GasBuddy, and my colleague from Cairo, Muhammad Yusri, who is from Attaqa.net. When we talk about OPEC decision today, OPEC meeting today was very short, but extremely significant. And I will explain why. If you look at last year, the two most important events in the oil market last year were a change in OPEC behavior and market structure as a result, and the Chinese use of SPR, which is also significant in terms of market structure. The change in OPEC plus behavior, well, ultimately it's really OPEC here, is this: that over a period of 30 years, every time OPEC decided to increase production, and some OPEC members couldn't increase their production, the members with spare capacity would increase their production substantially above their quota and take market share from others, the production that they couldn't produce. And that's always marred OPEC and caused so many problems within OPEC and made OPEC ineffective. What we saw last year for the first time in history, that the big OPEC members with spare capacity sticking to their quota and refusing to compensate for the others who did not, or they were not able to increase their production. This constitutes a major change in OPEC behavior and a major change in market structure. For those who basically studied kind of an advanced microeconomics and focus on on market structure and all types of oligopolies. The second change in the market structure is the Chinese use of the SPR. The Chinese, for the first time in history, we saw an oligopsony behavior. Now, we know what oligopoly is. Oligopoly, when you have few producers in the market. Oligopsony, basically, when you have few consumers and they have market power. And for the first time in history, we've seen a buyer who has market power, and that's China. Most of the growth in demand came from China. The amount of imports were huge, and they have major influence when they use the SPR because it reduces their imports, and therefore they can influence prices. I thought last year, as many of you know, that I predicted this late 2020, and it happened in 2021. And the only reason why we did not have $100 oil in 2021 was the Chinese behavior, because they flooded the market with SPR. And one issue related to this that's very important is that I thought the threshold was around 75. We found out later that the threshold was 70. So it was about $5 lower than what I expected. But they used their SPR. And the idea was that they will use it seasonally, since there are no rules for the SPR similar to those in the United States. So they can use it any way they want to. So the idea was they sell it during the summer months when demand is very high and prices are high. And then in the first quarter of the year, when demand declines and prices decline, they refill and replenish the SPR. Unfortunately for them, Putin went to Ukraine in February, that's the first quarter, and prices went up and they got stuck. But they got lucky again because they were able to do two things. The first one is to buy the cheap Russian oil, and the second one is to have those lockdowns that reduce demand, and they were able to replenish their SPR and their inventories, and their inventories, total inventories, went through the roof. And they are very high at this stage because of those two reasons. So they got lucky as a result of that. So that what happened in these are like the major events that affected market structure in 2021. Although 2022 is not finished yet, but it is very clear that we have some major events in 2022, and we'll talk about it at the end of the year again, because these are major events. Of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the sanctions that followed, that changed the market and the market structure. The second one is the massive use of the SPR by the Biden administration. This was unprecedented and has tremendous impact on the market. And the third one, and this is the most important, and I think this was the main reason for holding this space today. So please pay attention to this point, because this is a new thing in the market that's affecting market structure and the pricing and everything in the market. The new thing is the Saudis discovered the power of the official posted or the official selling prices, the OSPs. And that will bring us to today's decision. And we already seen evidence in recent months on the power of the OSP. And I will go back to this, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So what happened today? The White House was firmly convinced that the Saudis will increase production. And Biden can claim credit that, look, they did increase production, regardless of the amount. They can spend it. And I will explain some of the issues related to that spend. But the fact is, Biden did not speak about oil with Saudis during his visit. And the Saudis insisted that oil was never mentioned except what was mentioned in the public speeches as general comments, which means that probably the advisors have already agreed on various things even before the visit. And here I would like to emphasize the point that oil is political by nature. Oil is a political commodity. Now, OPEC leaders try to isolate oil from OPEC decisions and OPEC meetings, and they try this. But even they try, and they were successful sometimes, the influence of politics is huge on OPEC decisions. So what was OPEC decision today? The decision was to increase, and listen to this, to increase the target production, or the production target, or the ceiling by 100,000 barrels a day, not to increase production. We already went through this several times in the past. So to increase the ceiling or increase the target production, which means that the actual production could be way lower. But as I'm going to explain in a few minutes, it could be exactly the opposite, and I'm going to explain how. So the decision was to increase the ceiling or the production target by 100,000 barrels a day, and listen to this, for only September. Only September. This is also a significant development. So why this meeting is important? Because it is the first meeting that is free of COVID, the first meeting that is free of pre-planned production. Why? Because their plan to go back to the old ceiling ended at the end of August. So this was the first free meeting to negotiate and reach this decision. Many people expected higher output, but those who are familiar with this, and they noticed that the communications between the Russians and the Saudis and Novak visit to Saudi Arabia 4 days ago, it was very clear that it was if there was an increase in production, it's not going to be significant because of the influence of the Russians, and Russians are part of OPEC plus, and the decisions are made anonymously, so they need everyone to be on the table to agree to such a decision. So the decision was to increase the target by 100,000, which means for some it could be very bullish because the actual increase could be way, way lower. If you look at the actual increase could be probably about 30 to 35,000 barrels a day if they increase it. And I say if because I'm going to explain later another important point. And the other issue is that it is only for September. What does that mean is, since there is no plan anymore for future production, OPEC members are going to meet on monthly basis, and they are going to assess the market. And based on that, they might increase, keep, or cut production, which means that this increase is only for September. In October, they will meet and decide what to do, and they might cut production. And why I'm saying cut? Because if you look at all OPEC publications and what they've been saying in the last 3 days, especially for the committees, the technical committee and the market committee. The technical committee basically said that we have a surplus in 2022 and we have a surplus in 2023. So if you have a surplus, why you are increasing production? So that's one question. That's where the role of politics come in. And the GMMC, that's the market committee, basically says that it recommended increase of 100,000. And that 100,000 basically is for the whole group of OPEC Plus. And only a couple of countries can increase production. That's the idea behind the 30 to 35,000 increase in production in September. But the question is this bearish or bullish? So I know some of you are really surprised when I say it's bearish. I'll explain why. First of all, to go back to the original point, OPEC increased production by 100,000, even if they decided to increase it by 400,000, as some people expected. And even if the actual increase in production is 400,000, notice this. On Saturday or Sunday, Aramco is going to announce its official selling prices, the OSP. What if they raise prices significantly? If they raise prices significantly, especially to Asia, they are telling agents, please do not buy from me. And if you are not buying from me, there is no reason for me to increase production. And if there is no demand, then there is no reason for me even to increase production similar to last month. So the new thing that this is the most important result of today's space. From now on, OPEC decisions alone are meaningless without the OSP. We have to put those together to understand what OPEC is doing. So this is really, if you just take this point out of this space, that's enough. This is the $1 million answer. It is the OSP with the decision about output. So even OPEC decided to increase production. If Aramco increases the OSP prices significantly on Saturday or Sunday, that literally nullify all the increases. Or if there is a lot of politics involved, guess what? What if Aramco decrease the official selling prices on this weekend? What if they announce a decrease by $8 or $5, $6? So what does that mean is those who are bullish because of the 100,000 barrel increase in the ceiling and the limited increase in output, the moment Aramco announces a major decrease in prices, that's bearish. And that's why the emphasis on the two parts of the decision, the pricing decision on one side and the quantity decision on the other. So it's not over yet. We have to wait for this weekend to see what Aramco is going to say about pricing, whether they are going to increase it substantially, whether they are going to reduce it substantially, or keep it the same. Because this is only part of the decision. The second part of the decision, we'll know about it this weekend. The other point that, and this is the another result you can take from this space, is production is one thing, supply is another. So yes, the Saudis' share could be, let's say, 15,000 barrels a day, or close to 18 probably, and they might increase that production. But guess what? They can increase supplies substantially. And probably that will satisfy Biden's request for increase in supplies. So it will be increase in supplies, not increase in output. How? The demand for oil, mostly fuel oil, in the oil-producing countries in the Middle East and North Africa increases substantially in the summer because of the demand for cooling. The demand for cooling requires major increase in power generation, and most of the time this power generation is met by utilizing units that use fuel oil. And sometimes if they have shortages of fuel oil, they literally use just straight crude oil. Now we are coming into the end of the summer, so they can free some oil from domestic production, from domestic consumption, and export it. So while the Saudi share, for example, could be less than 20,000 barrels a day in this increase, they could increase supplies by probably 100 to 200,000 barrels a day if they want to, simply because that oil already being produced, it's already part of the quota, it's already agreed on, and all they get to do is just shift it from domestic consumption to exports. And therefore, that will make the Biden administration happy. And those who were waiting for 400,000, they get it, but they get it as production plus supply. And in this case, we can see a bearish sentiment in the market as a result of that. Here, I would like to go back to the issue of politics versus economics. I know some of my colleagues and friends may not like this statement, but look at OPEC decision versus Aramco decision today and this weekend. In a sense, if you want to take the Biden narrative, OPEC decision was political, and Aramco decision is going to be the economic one, and they complement each other. So, in a sense, politics and economics might work in the same direction sometimes, and sometimes they might work in the opposite direction. And sometimes when they work in the opposite direction, one of them could be stronger than the other, or they cancel each other. So the possibility of canceling each other this weekend, in my view, is very high. But we will see what's going to happen this weekend. That's what I have for today. This is intended to be short. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Patrick, if there are any questions, please let's take them.
If anyone has a question, just feel free to raise your hand there. I have one, Doctor. You tweeted Monday that you saw the fundamentals supporting Brent between $100 and $110 without a recession. Given the direction we're going, if we slip into a mild recession, and given the fact that fall and winter just a few months upon us, do you have a price target for if we do slip into a mild recession?
What I can say is the following. This is not based on any private information in any way. This is just the result of research based on several factors. And given the fact that OPEC is changing its attitude, it's starting today, because the plan to increase production has ended last month, I think they will defend $90. That's for Brent. So they will start defending 90. If the recession is severe, they cannot defend 90, so prices will decline. But probably the ultimate cut will be when prices are in the 60s.
Thank you. Why don't we have a hand up? Badir, go ahead.
Hello, good evening from Riyadh. I'm sorry, Dr. Anas, I missed your illustration regarding the reduction of consumption in Saudi. Can you please elaborate again on which part will be reduced to increase the supply? Thank you.
Yes, I will answer the question. By the way, we are going to have a space in Arabic after 1 hour and a half from now. So for those who are here and they would like to participate in the Arabic space, you are welcome. The idea is oil consumption increases in the summer because of power generation. And when the summer ends, then you have free oil that you can divert to exports. That's it.
Any major effect of this 100,000 will affect the market in US, the gasoline price? Do you think it will affect somehow?
No. Of course, Patrick is the master of this. He is the number one in the world in this. So Patrick would like to answer the impact on gasoline.
This is obviously a very knee-jerk reaction. Oil prices jumped $2, and now we've seen some of the increase fade. Obviously, if OPEC has stronger policies in terms of keeping production constrained, this could be a future impact. But I think in the short term, the national averages, there's still plenty of room to decline.
Thank you, Patrick. Seth?
Thank you, Dr. Anas. Really an admirer of your work. I hope you can hear me. I'm dialing in internet connection.
I hear you.
One question I had in relation to your most recent comment. What is the likely reaction going to be in the event there is a sort of severe recession? Do you think OPEC Plus will even consider balancing the market or cutting production in that situation? And secondly, what from P companies will they also react in the same way, i.e., looking at their own capex and production cuts? Thank you.
Generally speaking, when we talk about OPEC Plus, the agreement is still there and it will continue. So we have to distinguish between the OPEC Plus agreement that's been signed in 2016 and between the agreement to cut production and then increase it. These are two separate things. So the OPEC Plus as a unit or as an organization is still functional and it will continue. And the commitment of Russia to that is very strong. Of course, the Saudis' commitment to that is very strong too. And they are going to be extremely active. They learned the lesson. I think since 2016, we have major changes. I emphasize the word market structure. We are seeing those changes firsthand, and that will continue. So watch for October. If we end up with signs of recession, they will cut production. So it's not, those meetings are not only about increasing production. And here I would like to emphasize the idea, some of you already heard it from me. There is a Russian commitment to OPEC Plus that Russia is willing to cut output from 2 to 3 million barrels a day if needed in case of recession. And I believe they will do it. And that will eliminate some of the friction within the Putin regime because some of the advisors and some of the people in the Russian government are truly angry that Russian oil is sold at a massive discount. So in case of a cut of 2 to 3 million, that will eliminate that discount. What was the second question?
The second question
Sorry.
was what will be the reaction from some of the private producers
Yes.
in the US?
Generally speaking, if you look at the United States in particular, if you look at the shale companies are way better off over the medium term and long term with prices between like 70 and 85. Way better than 110. 110 is really scary for them. The political pressure is huge. And investors think if this is the peak, then if things are going to decline, then why invest, etc. So prices between 70 to 85 are really good for shale companies over the medium and long term. Back to you, Patrick.
Good question. Energy Blogger had his hand up, so go ahead.
Hi there, Patrick. Thanks for the opportunity. My question to Dr. Anas is, has the declaration of cooperation from 2018, 2020, all of this come to an end now? And the second question is, why even do this 100K increase? Is there any physical logic to it, or it is more political?
Repeat the second question, please.
Why increase this $100,000 barrels a day? Is it more political rather than anything physical market to support physical
All right.
market?
Regarding the first one, the agreement OPEC Plus is here to stay. End of story. What ended at the end of August is the agreement to return production to return production ceiling or production target to pre-COVID level. But OPEC Plus as an organization is here to stay. And the increase by 100,000, the political pressure is very clear. But again, we have to wait until we see two things. As I mentioned earlier, we have to wait to see what Aramco pricing is going to be over the weekend. And we have to wait to see whether there is additional supplies above production. So we will see what that, but we cannot separate politics from it, especially that on the day before OPEC meeting, on the day of the technical committee meeting, the State Department announced that it approved the Patriot missile, the sale of the Patriot missiles to Saudi Arabia. So a lot of people are connecting both, and therefore they kind of look at it as political. Back to you, Patrick.
Evgeny, you connected. If anyone else, by the way, has a
Yep.
question, please raise your hand. Over to you, Evgeny.
Okay, so I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago when the Department of Energy in the USA said they're going to replenish the SPR using future contracts starting next year, if I'm not mistaken. And can you comment on that and the power that Aramco now has with this new pricing, standard pricing thing that you mentioned? Thank you.
Yes, we are going to have a special space on this where we can discuss it in details very soon with Sohaib Abbas. I can see Sohaib there. Good morning, Sohaib. So we'll have this very soon. I will answer this in details at that time. But since you asked, the politically it is unacceptable. Financially, it is unacceptable. Economically, it does not make sense. But we'll discuss those in details in the space in a couple of days with Sohaib.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Patrick.
Grant, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Dr. Anas. Dr. Anas, I did wonder if you had any thoughts on the press release where it was mentioned that the severely limited availability of excess capacity necessitates utilizing it with great caution. Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned this because this was in the outline that I want to talk about today, and I skipped it because I was expecting a question, and you did a great job on that. So thank you. This is one of the most important way of communication we ever seen from OPEC officially to the rest of the world and OPEC Plus. Those press releases were never used as a kind of a form of communication with the other side, and literally here we mean the Biden administration. So today, this is another development in OPEC behavior or OPEC Plus behavior. When they instituted this or included this in their press release and their official documentation. And the idea, if you want to look at the story from 50,000 feet, that emphasizes the political pressure because this is a response to the political pressure on those countries to increase production. And we've seen this during the Biden administration meeting with the Crown Prince MBS, because MBS speech in front of Biden was very clear. He said, we are going to increase our production capacity to 13 million barrels a day, which is now it's 12. So they are going to increase 1 million, but no more. He was very frank about it. And the message was, when we talk about climate change, we all have to work to fight climate change. But you guys are doing it wrong. And the demand for oil and gas is going to increase. And we need additional investment. And we need additional investment from everyone. And we are doing our part. We are investing. We are increasing capacity. But you guys have to do your part too. So MBS message basically was embedded in today's OPEC press release. That, look, you guys don't pressure me. You keep pressuring us politically. You need this, you need this, you need this, you need this. Stop and focus on increase in investment, improve the environment for investment. And we need investment throughout the world. It's not only in the Gulf or within OPEC. So the only way you can look at it is that the message is more political than economic as a response to the political pressure from the Biden administration and others. Probably you heard what Macron said a couple of days ago too. So it is a response to the political pressure. Do they have spare capacity to end this year without any problems? Yes. But the issue here is they really want to stop that political pressure on them by saying, look, you guys have to allow investment. The other point I would like to mention here is, and some of you heard it from me before, I heard this from the top senior officials in Saudi Arabia when they said, never again. And the statement, this is a quote, never again was a reference to 2008 and what happened in 2008, because the Saudis at that time exhausted all their marketable spare capacity. And therefore, they lost their power in controlling the market, and prices went up to $147, as some of you recall. I know some of you are very young, so you probably won't remember that. But the idea here is they really learned a lesson that if we keep some spare capacity, this is going to be a sword that prevents manipulation in the market and speculators from trying to jack prices up to prices that are not wanted by OPEC or by the consuming countries. So never again means we are not going to exhaust our spare capacity. We will keep it there. We'll keep it just in case of like severe emergency, and that's it. So the message today in this press release, first, it is the first time they communicate this officially through OPEC to the consuming countries, especially to the Biden administration. And the second is it is a reply to the political pressure to increase production. Back to you, Patrick.
I think we'll take maybe one or two more questions. I know
Sure.
for my part, I'm going to jump over to the EIA data. Chris, did we get to your question? If not, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. My question was, Dr. Nas, you just mentioned that the shale drillers really like that price, in that mid-70s range. Would you have a price in mind that you think is optimal for the offshore oil industry? Thank you.
It is the same thing, and you cannot separate the two. This market, you have one price. Of course, when you count for quality and geographic locations and others, you can say various things, but there is one price at the end. And some of you recall the sweet spot that I talked about, and it was at that time 68 to 75. By the way, people keep asking about the sweet spot. The sweet spot has not changed much, and the sweet spot declines with inflation. Again, it declines with inflation. It does not rise. The sweet spot is not a prediction. The sweet spot is just the range of prices that are good for producers and consumers, and that include the offshore producers. Back to you, Patrick.
If anyone has a final question, looks like I'm going to approve Comrade here in just a second. We'll get to you, Comrade, and I think if nobody else has a question on us after Comrade, I'll throw it back
I
to
think
you.
we should end because of various reasons.
Comrade, go ahead quickly with your question.
I would like to know, I'm from Nigeria actually, and looking at the oil prices in the world, it appears that it's an advantage to some of the countries. But here in our country, Nigeria, the thing is affecting people from the local, from the people from the local markets. Why is it happening in such a way? Is it happening in other countries of the world, or is only happening here in Nigeria? Thank you.
Probably you need a Nigerian expert to explain that. I know many things about Nigeria, but it's very hard for me to answer this question. Patrick, since everyone is here, here is another reason why prices are declining. U.S. crude oil inventories increased by 4.5 million barrels, and they are around 427 right now. 427, that's about 30 million barrels above the threshold to be bullish. And bullish means a continuous increase in prices. Also, gasoline inventories increased by about 200,000 barrels, and distillates decreased by 2.4 million. Any comment from you on those numbers?
I think the numbers were, par for the course. I think the surprise was looking at another week of implied motor gasoline demand that was only 8.54 million barrels. For those that were around last week, you'll remember the jolt, the upward increase that we had been waiting for after July 4 in the U.S. had occurred. The U.S. Implied demand last week was 9.3 million barrels. So to see the number plummeting back to 8.5 million barrels is a bit of a head scratcher.
Thank you, Patrick. I know you have to leave. And for those who I can see some people are asking for or raising their hands. If it is an urgent question, please contact me via Twitter or other means. I'll be happy to answer it. We will have a space very soon with Sohaib within a couple of days on the SPR and the the whole issues regarding the futures market and the use of futures market in the SPR. Space very soon with Sohaib within a couple of days on the SPR and the whole issues regarding the futures market and the use of futures market in the SPR. So we'll have a session on that probably for about 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. And as for today, I hope it was beneficial to you. And please, anything related to gasoline or products, you have Patrick. Follow Patrick. Where is Pat? I saw Pat here earlier. She is not here anymore. Pat is an expert on the contracts and pricing. And I would like to thank my colleague, Mohammed Yusri from Cairo. Attaqa is the only platform, the only media platform that focuses on energy in the Arabic language. And I say in the Arabic language, I don't say in the Arab world because a large number of followers are in Europe and the United States. And do not forget to use that translate button in Twitter, because I post and they post a lot of useful materials and sometimes breaking news in Arabic. All you got to do, just push that translate button and you get it in your language, whatever the language you are using on your laptop or phone. Thank you all, and you all have a great day. Bye.